So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. I'm Karmit Chaba. I'm from CloudWise. And just a few words about CloudWise. CloudWise is maximum cloud security and compliance from architecture design to runtime. So if you want to learn more about CloudWise, you can see our website right here, cloudwise.io. So please go and check it out. Also, we have the expo section. You need to go back to the reception, and there you can go to the expo. We have a VIP package for you there, so make sure you get that. Also, I want to tell you that I'm going to send you the recording of this event so you can see it again if you missed something. And that's it. We're going to, we have a few subjects for you today. We decided to have a small change and not wait till the end for the Q&A. So we have on the side the Q&A section. Feel free to ask us anything, of course, the panel more than me, and we'll share your questions and try to answer everything. We have the time limit, but we'll make sure every question get answered. So let's get started by meeting the panel. So, okay, we have this great panel. Thank you for being here. We're very excited to have you. We have Victor, Benny, and Oren. We want to know a little bit about you, so please share a few more details about your experience and where you're coming from. So let's start from the top to the bottom. Let's start with Victor. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so you heard already, I'm Victor. I work for Upbound. It's a company behind Crossplane, which if you don't know, you should. And outside of that, I spend most of my time helping community one way or another, very much involved in open source, community, things like that. Just find me, Google me, and ask whatever you want. I will help you out.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much, Victor. So now let's meet Benny. Benny, please share a little bit about yourself.
Hi, so it's great. Thank you for having me, and it's great being with you, Victor and Kalmit and everyone on board. So I've been, with various positions in various companies, like from the IT to the R&D to the consultant companies. So it's like I know everyone's what bugs everyone. And today I'm actually at CloudWise, helping our customers, and it's great having you here, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining.
Great, thank you so much, Benny. And now, Oren, please tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you want to share with us.
Thank you very much. I want to first thank my respected colleague here. And of course, thank you, CloudWise. My name is Oren Elimelech. I'm a cybersecurity advisor and consultant and chief information security officer for various companies. Currently, I hold a position in a company known for RMM and PSA, known as Atera. But I also consult to various financial institutions, credit card companies, insurance companies. I've been in the IT industries for practically almost 30 years. So I've had a lot of things, a lot of scratch on my back working with everyone. And the shift to the cloud definitely has its strides. And I'm here to share with my experience working with developers, whether if it's small companies, large companies, starting from 50 developers all the way to 2,500, 3,000 developers, making sure that security is integrated to the process. It's built in, not bolt on, both on the terms of development, both in terms of configuration, working with the cloud. So feel free to send me, search me up on LinkedIn. And I also teach this in various universities throughout the world in the last 15 years. Thank you.
You're muted.
You're muted, Kamit.
Sorry. So thank you, everyone. It's going to be really exciting. So let's start with our first subject. So actually, a lot of things happen over the cloud when it comes to the cloud in 2021, especially when it comes to COVID. You know, it really made the cloud explode. So what's the first question I have for the panel is, how would you summarize 2021 in cloud security? Please, let's start with you, Victor.
Yeah, so I think that there are two major things happening right now, for a while now, or a couple of years, but now it really intensified, especially COVID. The first one is nobody's denying cloud anymore. So companies that are not already there are moving there. And that's especially challenging simply because slowly companies are realizing that running things in cloud is not the same as running on-prem. So the challenges are really coming from not yet being fully prepared, not yet being fully familiar with wherever they're running stuff now, whether that's AWS, Azure, Google Cloud, Alibaba, whatever, right? So the challenge is lack of practical knowledge, right? Which you gain from doing something in production over a longer period of time, right? And the second major thing happening is that companies are also shifting left, right? That means that it's not good enough anymore to have a security department that comes half a year after you started some project and says, those shall not pass, right? We are moving away from that idea. We are moving away from the idea that neither security nor any other group in the company is a blocker, but enabler of ultimately of developers, right? And those two things are simply very new to a lot of companies, and they themselves pose significant security risks simply because any change is potential security risk because you do not know really what will be the effects of that change until you implement the change itself, right?
What do you think about that, Oren? How would you summarize 2021 when it comes to cloud security?
I think cloud is not new, but we realized that a lot of things, and specifically due to COVID, a lot of companies moved more rapidly to the cloud without looking at the security first. And I agree totally with Victor. We want to enable things, but we want to do it in the right and secure way. Because just adapting the cloud without having security built in from the beginning will cause havoc, will cause problem. And again, looking strongly at what has happened in the last 2 years, most companies. I work for a company that is 100% cloud, and the Stride is actually progressing to this. And if you would take, for example, the what is happening, and we can definitely see that cloud is being a target for configuration mistake, basic security. And we want to enable, the transition, the capability, the access, but we want to do it in a secure manner. Because if somebody gets a hold of our infrastructure, and this is not only, for any company, but for providers, it doesn't matter which kind of provider, doesn't matter which platform, it will have a very strong impact on the industry. And we need to look also at suppliers. So adapting the cloud is good. It's not bad. Actually, I think it's sometimes more secure than on-prem, but we need to do it in the right way, in the right approach to this.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. So last but not least, Benny, what are your thoughts? How would you summarize cloud security in 2021, especially when it comes to, everything that happened?
So thanks. So I've been working in the cloud for the last 5 years, 100%, and I do see 2021 ending with a lot of sweat. There were many projects that were done, major shifts from either dev environments to large-scale productions or small-scale productions to really large-scale productions. So we see the adoption and scale grew with the cloud maturity. And as that maturity grew, many projects changed their architecture. There were some shifts that were, quick lift and shift to the cloud, some born to the cloud and did modern architectures, and still did another iteration to create new architectures for their product and infrastructure in the cloud. And with their adoptions and the cloud maturity, with all these shifts and changes, security has to keep up, and we've seen changes in the products being used. We've seen changes in the architectures being deployed. So as far as maturity goes, we see a big maturity in the security aspect for 2022, because companies now know what they want from the cloud. They will not take the first offer that they get, and they will plan their steps carefully, because they know that they need to do things the right way. They pay the price of the mistake. And we're looking forward to see security being adopted right into the architecture, into the platform and the pipeline, and into the design phases. So really looking forward for 2022 to really improve on that areas as well.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing from all of you is that actually we're moving a phase in cloud security. It's not like it was in the beginning, and companies are getting more mature in their approach to cloud security. It's really interesting. We're going to talk about that later on, about the future of cloud security. But right now, I want to ask you about, I think it was in late 2021 or just the beginning of 2022 when Log4Shell exploded over everything. I mean, everywhere I went to see on the internet, everyone talked about Log4Shell and made videos and everything. But I want to share that with everyone. We did a little survey and we asked CISOs what are their thoughts about Log4Shell. Was it, really something that was high in demand? Was it something specific, they needed to handle, or was it just another issue? And most answered it was just another issue for them. But my question is, it's not about Log4Shell. The question is, do you think we're going to see more issues like Log4Shell, Log4j? And how would CISO will handle those things? How do you think they can prepare, or basically they can prepare and just roll along with it? So what are your thoughts? Who wants to take it first?
I'd love to.
Sure.
Thank you. So first of all, it's Log4j and not Log4j. And basically, it started at December 9th. And Log4j has been really, something that is unique. Why? Because we've not seen such a big impact. And I'll talk about looking at the perspective of the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, but definitely we've not seen such an impact. And I compare it to a pandemic since Heartbleed. And Heartbleed was, a vulnerability that was used through OpenSSL, leveraging the capability and affected a lot of companies, a lot of products that it's integrated, built into the open source product. So if you're relying on any open source libraries, whether it's used in pre-production stages or even products and utilities that is post-production, whether if it's Linux, Ansible, Elasticsearch, whatever. But any commercial or developer community are using this. And just to put it as a reference on the table, most open source software today is based on open source components and libraries. Now, definitely, Log4j has been had a big impact. Why? Because it has a functionality that is used for output logging to a variety of targets, whatever that's used being in Java, and thousands of libraries and applications uses that. Now, it received a critical implication of 10 out of 10 score on the CVSS. Now I think it moved to 9.2, but definitely what has been the big impact is three things. One, it has been since version, if I recall correctly, 2.0 beta 9 that was released in July or August 2013. Okay, all the way to the new version 2.14.1. Now, this means that you had over 9 years of vulnerability without nobody detecting, not even a pen testing. Why? Because nobody was searching for it. But that's one impact, okay? And that goes back to the OpenSL I mentioned on the Hardwick in 2012. But definitely, there's a lot of things dependent on the Log4j with the impact. And if you would look at the Maven repository and the Log4j core on Apache, there's 7,500 Maven artifact. That's huge. And even taking it further, millions of downloads, around 29 million downloads in the last 4 months, if you look at the Apache site. So this is huge. But the most thing that causes this to become a pandemic, in my point of view, is, there has been, and I compared over 60 variation of the original exploit was released, and the release was on December 10th, 2012, 2.5 months ago. So you had over 60 variation within 72 hours. If you compare that to COVID had like, say, 5 mutation within 2 years? Think about it, 72 mutation within 72 hours. And just the reported, within 72 hours of the release of those 60 variation, you had over 1 million reported attacks. Those reported attacks. So that's a big impact. And companies suffer this. And, but I want to embrace and give some positive feedback. Following those 72 hours, December 13, there's been over 700,000 downloads of the fixed version. So, the same way that the hackers responded quickly, promptly, also the community responded promptly. And definitely this leads that looking forward, and I would to look at, NPM packages and everything going on, everything that has dependencies needs to be validated. And the security looking, even on cloud products using providers, I don't want to mention any companies, but they also use the same thing. Doesn't matter which cloud provider. They're dependent on Log4j, any product, anything. And looking at this, we need to be aware of the platform, the configuration, the software, how we're using it, what it's integrated. And definitely that's something that leverages, and big companies suffer this and still are working on this. And if you don't need to look at, there has been 5 fixes since December 10th. Why? Because now developers are looking at the code and each one is releasing another batch, another fix, another thing to fix this. And definitely it's a pandemic. And looking forward, we want to opt for shifting left, moving and having the security as started at the beginning of the cycle as soon as possible, because that will save time, money, and make sure that are fixing security and quality issues as soon as possible, lowering the cost. And we need to be more involved as CISO ensuring this, and also looking at the configuration of the stuff that we're using. So again, sorry for the very lengthy explanation, but that's my humble point of view.
No, it was really interesting. So I guess from what I get from you is maybe people told us that it wasn't such a big issue because it was fixed so quickly that by the time we asked them, so they felt like it became another issue because the fix was immediate.
I beg different a bit.
Okay, so anyone else want to share their opinion about that?
So, a couple of things. Just to clarify, maybe what was said. Things like that, vulnerabilities in open source are a real problem because everybody can read the open source. But I want to make sure that everybody understands that using closed source does not really help much in those cases because there is no closed source that doesn't use open source. Correct. So you're going to face the same issues whether you use directly open source or you go through a vendor that says, hey, this is not open source, which doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. This is not open source. There is open source behind the hood always. I doubt that there is a single closed source project that is not relying on open source. So everybody gets affected. It's not kind of only those using open source directly, right? Second thing I think it's important is, as you already said, exploits are very fast and they spread very fast. Fixes to those exploits, especially in open source, are also very fast. Now, the real challenge and the real question is, how fast are companies at upgrading, right? and how regularly they do those things, and so on and so forth. It is not uncommon in big enterprises to wait like for 5 years until you upgrade something, right? And the real challenge over there is, if you look at I don't know, whatever. Let's say that you're running Kubernetes version from 3 years ago, or you're running Ubuntu from 5 years ago. That's the real challenge, because you are not benefiting from hundreds or thousands of fixes made between when that something was released and now, right? So I'm more concerned on how fast are companies to respond, end users' response, than really response from community maintaining projects.
All right. So Benny, what are your thoughts about that?
So I think that guys, that's a great panel. Thanks. So they did a great explanation for the different areas. Just on the large concept and the attackers and the recent events. Basically nobody likes to work hard, right? Not the team to update. They have really large projects on their mind at the moment. And the security as well. And also the attackers, right? The attackers will always look for the weak link in the chain, right? And they always call their friends to the backdoor party. As popularity grew, we've seen additional attacks starting to target open source. It became viral. Everything in 2021 and 2022, viralness is everywhere. Also on the attack, everyone is informed. So 2 changes we noticed was, yes, 1 increase in open source attacks, but also companies understanding that a firewall or existing security practices maybe is not enough for them. And they are now attempting to gain a full observability on all the areas, right? Whether it be the operating systems that Victor mentioned, but also the security development lifecycle today with the open source, but also networking. They try to now understand, okay, what are all of my vulnerabilities everywhere, and they really do a mapping process today. So it's additionally, how long will it take them to react, both actively to fix these changes, but also proactively understanding their environment and then applying security best practices across the board.
Okay, great. So unless anyone has something to add on this subject or want to respond to one of the other panel members, shall we move on to the next subject? Okay, I just want to remember all our viewers there. You can ask us anything, ask the panel. There's a Q&A on the side, so feel free to ask anything. All right, so let's move on to the next subject. We touched it a little bit in the beginning. Basically, we want your input about the future of cloud security, especially in 2022, but not limited to. How do you see it going forward in respect of all the stakeholders in the company, not only the CISOs, but also the CISOs, because this is mainly their responsibility. So what's your take on that? Who wants to go first? Just go ahead.
Silence. Okay, I'll go.
Everyone.
Everyone wants to go.
To understand the security, I think, and many other things, we need to see where are we going in general outside of security, right? Because security needs to follow what's going on. And where we are going, I believe, in this year and years to follow is a further abstraction of things and building IDPs, internal developer platforms, right? Which is in line with shifting left. What that means is that we will see more and more companies creating IDPs which enable developers to have freedom to do everything. Like, hey, you need to create a cluster. Don't call me. Here's a button, right? Here are the fields to fill in. You want to deploy, this is how you deploy. You want to define application, this is how you apply or deploy an application, right? So that will continue. Enablement of developers through creating intermediary layers between cloud and those developers, and through which they are going to have freedom to do things through simplification and also abstraction in a way, right? Creating opinionated things and hiding the complexities, because vast majority of people should not really see cloud. Vast majority of people will never understand all the intricacies of AWS or Kubernetes or what's not. So that is happening already and is going to continue happening. Now, from security perspective, just like from other perspective, what that means, if I'm right, that we will be focusing more and more on IDPs, is that all those services creating by ops, and I'm using ops now in a very wide, with a very wide meaning everybody on the right side. That means that ops will be creating more and more services that are consumed by their customers, which is developers. And that means that security needs to be embedded into those services. So when somebody says, hey, you do not need to open a Jira ticket and wait for 3 weeks until I give you a cluster, you can create a cluster. This is how you do it. Or you can deploy or define your application. This is how you do it. Security needs to be embedded into the services that are given to developers to consume. So the future of cloud security, from my perspective, is embedding security, not necessarily shifting left to developers like, hey, this is, you're going to spend 3 years learning everything you need to learn about security, but embedding security into services created by ops or DevOps or SREs or whatever we call those groups of people, and having it over there, right? It's part of the service that we are providing to developers. That's where we must be going. There is no other solution, right?
Right, exactly. Benny, what are your thoughts?
100%. I actually agree with Victor. What we've seen is really the requirement for security to be there for the users, to be there for the CISOs, to be there for the R&D, for the cloud infrastructure, everywhere along the process. It should be accessible. It should be 100% understood and easy to use and implement. Like everything, if I'm securing now my Redis, is it secured with HTTPS? With is it a secured connection to the Redis, and what are the implications for my application to enable that connection, right? What is the pull request I need to do in order to support that security recommendation, and having that accessible, and as Boris mentioned, with the click to support security, will not require so much development effort and testing and will delay security. And anytime we delay security, we increase risk immediately. That's an automatic process. So it goes to basically in 2022, we are going to see a simplification of security in a very rich and complex environment, right? Our processes are with so many different pipelines and clouds and multi-clouds. So we're going to see solutions that simplify security in this complex environment. And the ones that are going to do that are going to win.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Owen, please share your thoughts.
Thank you. So there's not much to say. My respected colleagues said pretty much everything, but definitely looking on this, we've talked about the Apache Log4j, but I would look at the entire thing as like a one huge realm. So whether if it's a open source vulnerabilities as to Apache Log4j, but this can also lead, for example, malware or hidden code in open source npm, for example, that was used in other things, in COA and other ways. That also was, for example, implemented in SolarWinds, or hiding, or leveraging software dependencies. You don't know if it's inside or outside when you build a pipeline. Okay, companies, developers have numerous pipeline. Where does it pull? How does it work? Okay, vulnerabilities when working with a public cloud, for example, poised pipeline execution (PPE), or Azure Instance Metadata Service, IMDS, vulnerability in that, or SSRF, server-side request forgery. So everything needs to be validated. Everything needs to be reviewed. In terms of looking at security, we need to make sure that we understand, we build our security roadmap according to this, and understanding, what are the dependencies? What is the company doing? Are we a developer? Do we sell software? Do we sell a product? Do we make transactional funds? Do we financial organizations on the cloud? We need to adapt in order to understand what we're having and to protect what we have. But, and I want to put a strong emphasis on what my friend Victor said, we need to enable. We need to be an enabler and not a blocker, but we need to have the security built in and not bolted on in order to make sure that we enable this, because we don't want to hinder the business. We want to support the business and becoming, part of the business and ensuring that the security takes into consideration the risk profile, the overview, understanding what is happening in the organization in terms of security. And it's important. And I think that we're going to see more cloud happening to companies, having pipeline automation, pulling data, understanding where data reside. So all the supply chain of other, dependencies of cloud will be integrated. So we need to understand that very, very carefully. And also having the understanding of the security that we're dependent about, other clouds. So shared responsibility, because working with a public or even private cloud, there's a shared responsibility, but there's also a shared vulnerability. So what's dependent on you, what's dependent on him, and have you reviewed everything? Okay, so there is vulnerability built into other providers. So having the proper, whether using system identity, user identity, having the proper vault and everything, how do you use the secrets and how do you work on that? That's I think it's important. But again, having a proper risk framework looking forward, that's the most important in my humble opinion. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So I think we talked before about shift left. I think it's really interesting to hear a little bit about it, a little more about it. So can you please just tell us, how can companies shift left? I mean, who is it involved? What's the best way to handle it? And how to get everyone on board with it? I think it's very interesting.
The key obstacle, I think, in shifting left is, in many cases, not understanding who are your customers, right? We have departments all around, and without having it clear that they are actually supposed to be serving certain customers. And if you're not a developer, actually that's strange what I say, because everybody's developer, right? Everybody's writing code, I hope. If you're not, you're in wrong business, right? So everybody is developer in terms that everybody's writing code, but in this context, I'm referring to end user app developers, right? So they're writing applications that are accessible by external users, whether that's software for ATMs for bank or a website for shopping, doesn't matter, right? Now, if you're not that person, then your customers, your users are the developers. And you need to fulfill their needs. And that applies to ops, that applies to security, that applies to platform teams, that applies to absolutely everybody. And this now sounds silly, kind of like, oh, of course that they are my customers, right? But in practice, that is not something that is happening still commonly, right? So once you understand that you must have a customer, you must have a user, and you are satisfying your customer's needs instead of the other way around, then things change. Then shift left happens naturally, right? As long as your customers have a chance to say, no, I don't want you. Kind of like, you're not giving me a good service. I'm going to look for somebody else, right? You need to have that freedom to choose a provider, everybody. Just as if you're an ops person or let's say ops person, right? You're a customer of AWS. And who is your customer? Your customer is a developer. Same thing for security. You are a customer of one or multiple vendors that give you security tools. Those tools are understandable by developers. They are your customers. You need to figure out how you're going to embed that security and make it transparent for people on the left side of you. Right? Just as when I shop on Amazon, I do not choose whether a package will be delivered by a moto or a car or a plane. I just say I want fast or slow because I don't want to pay for fast, right? You need to figure out what are their needs, what people want, and make sure that everything else is just happening, just there, right? And that applies to security.
So basically, what you're saying is, when you start everything that is about the app, it has like a side of the security you need to consider.
Yeah. So if I'm a security person and if I say our system needs to be secured, I cannot accomplish that security in a traditional way by saying, okay, now when you're finished, you send me your stuff, and then I will spend 3 weeks reviewing it, and then I will tell you that you cannot go to production with that because you did it wrong, right? That cannot continue. What I need to do is to make sure that I support other people in my company by making sure that their stuff is just secure from the get-go, right? Whether that's through education, whether that's through creating services, whether that's through any other means, depends from case to case. But what really, really matters is that we cannot shift left things by saying, and now you make sure that your things are secure, or now you make sure that you understand AWS inside out. That's not shift left. Shift left is not kind of, oh, people were throwing over the wall to me, and I'm now going to throw over the wall to them, and I'm just going to say shift left is now you do everything, right? That's not going to happen. That's ridiculous. What must happen in shift left is that enabling others to do things through services, and that applies to security just like anything else.
Mm-hmm. Anyone wants to add anything about that? I think it's really, I mean, it sounds really simple when you say it, but I'm sure
it's not simple.
It's not.
It's not simple at all. If it would be simple, everybody would be doing
Everybody would do it. But what the thing is, Victor is saying, the motivation to manage any security, also for open source vulnerabilities or anything, is not only cyber, but also financially. Okay, that's what Victor is meaning. And for example, if you want to fix 2 defects in production, it would cost you a lot more if you move to shift left. But just throwing it all the fence all the way, somebody needs to pick this up. Okay, so you cannot always shift left. Somebody needs to do the work. So you move from production to QA and security, you move to the build, you move to the coding. So that's the shift left purpose. But again, somebody needs to do the hard work.
Ideal situation to me in a Log4j scenario would be if the day after it was discovered, somebody made PRs to applications, systems, whatever, and saying, now you just need to merge it.
Yes.
That's how I'm shifting it left. I'm giving you the opportunity to choose when to merge it because it's your application. I do not want to merge it for you. I do not want to fix it for you directly because I do not control your work, but I'm not going to give you the burden of figuring it out yourself. Here's a pull request, approve it. That would be ideal situation.
I wish.
Yeah, we had an internal joke. Yeah.
Whether that PR is created by an army of people creating PRs or automatically through pipelines or through whichever means, that would be a separate discussion, right? But the end result is that patches are ready. Patches are ready. You just need to accept it. Yeah. Ideal. I know that we are not there, but that should be the goal.
Benny, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, we had an internal joke in an earlier meeting with Victor that pull request was the solution for everything, right? It was I have a problem, pull request. I have a challenge, pull request. Something I need to know, pull request it. So Victor gave a great insight as a developer. Like what I want is not you tell me what I need to do. Make a pull request for me, right? So we're gonna see a lot more of that, I hope, soon. And also the collaboration between the teams. I really want to look see more in 2022. I think we'll get to that question later. I think we'll expand on that soon.
All right. So I think it was really interesting. So our next subject is actually, it kind of, continues with what we discussed until now, and that's recommendations for 2022. So I don't want it to be only CISOs. I mean, it would be great to give recommendation for CISOs, but also to everyone who works with the cloud and involved with the cloud, because I think it shouldn't be just for one person to have the whole thing under, like you said in the beginning, like everything is just for one person. It should be a collaboration between a lot of people inside the organization. So give us your recommendation. I think this is the part that everyone is waiting for. I want to hear, recommendations and things they can do and start moving forward with that. Owen, we haven't heard from you in a
Actually, I
long
would
time.
love to
So
also
please
start.
start.
I can also start if you feel
You
like
want
it.
to
go
start?
ahead.
Okay, sure.
Thanks. So actually, even before sharing the actual thoughts, I just, something, not just a certain tip, but earlier Victor and Owen briefly mentioned about being the enabler, right? So I've met with hundreds of companies throughout the years, and the most secured companies, were the ones that understood enablement instead of enforcement, right?
Yes.
So the security teams that sat down with the R&D to understand their challenges, to find the correct way to implement security together, they nailed it. So security teams that harness R&D teams, that leverage their deep understanding of their own technology, they live that day by day. You don't know better than them. So if you can harness their potential to shed light on how you can help them secure it, these were the security teams that nailed it. Their adoption of security was so far ahead. They were so mature down the road. Their visibility was way beyond what other companies I've noticed are doing. And going to the other side of the spectrum, we have to shed light on that area as well. We have security teams that we've seen not cooperating with R&D, not receiving the budget to do certain things in their companies or resources. So that has to stop, right? We see challenges for security personnel that are beyond their capabilities, right? So companies, it's like, we can't take everything into consideration that yeah, everyone is doing security, and we can, talk about the the next steps. We have to, also bring the truth that some companies are not there yet, so they have to get to speed, and the collaboration between the teams is 100% the key factor I've noticed to adopt security. Yeah, sorry,
I
you
would
were
just
about to say something?
make a small correction. They don't have to. Survival is optional.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not mandatory. Survival is
Exactly.
optional. So you don't have to.
Victor, I love you.
Everyone loves Victor.
I mean, that's what's happening in tech, right? Companies disappear overnight.
Yes.
And it all depends really from one year to another. One sector is under attack and being disrupted. And when we see such huge disruptions, companies that were not prepared for a change disappear. I mean, it's enough if you take a look at Fortune 100 companies, let's say 30 years ago or 20 years ago, and today, and you will see that those are not the same companies. There's probably not more than one or two companies from 20 years ago in today's Fortune 100, right? Or whatever list you take. So you have a choice. Survival is optional. You can just keep doing what you're doing until you disappear into oblivion, or you can keep up. What is really important, I hate kind of cliches when people say every company is a software company, but in this case, it's true. Everybody's business is software, and if you do not understand that, you're in big trouble.
I agree with you, but I'll put another correction. First of all, I like to say adapt or die. You have to adapt, okay? Because if you're not prepared, I will take it to, for example, to StarTech, okay, with the Verge, okay, resistance is futile. You cannot resist the change. It's gonna come. You have to be prepared. So companies, again, their business might be software, but they're dependent of software, and it's never, a closed source. It's open source. You're dependent. There's a shift to the cloud. Even your provider, the supplier, whatever service, even if you're, whatever you do, you're still dependent on supply chain, products, cloud, whatever. Just basically, having a proper email, whether if it's, Office 365 or Google Suite, whatever, you're dependent on those. And you need to have security, because an impact can cause a business to have business disruption, reputational damage, data leakage, or even, encryption and ransomware. So this can lead to a company going out of business, definitely damaging the reputation in business, and not able to work. And you have to adapt. You have to be prepared. You have to be secure. So I would say you're not only a software company, but you need to invest in security. Security, and I'll repeat, that needs to be built in, not bolt on, bolt after. Because if you would not think about security when you're doing stuff, even opening up Zoom Teams for working in COVID, working remotely, having capability, access, transaction, whatever you need to do, just sending, for example, HR contract, going to, keeping it in an external system, whatever you want to do, that can lead to a disruption, to a problem, to anything. And even selecting a proper CRM, ERP, choosing a cloud provider, you need to put security as something that needs to have a proper review and risk approach. If you're not prudent, you will be burned. And I totally agree. So security might not be your core business. That's okay. But it still needs to be a priority, and it's not optional. It's mandatory.
Mm-hmm.
So 100% there. So yeah, and as far as we've seen, companies bring that power to security and collaborate with them and create meaningful relationships inside the companies that translate to actual procedures in the day-to-day operation. They succeed. And we'd like to see much more of that adoption further down the road. So that on the relationship and the importance of security, I think technically speaking, I think we're going to see a lot of solutions to, if we discuss the adoption of security and automation, security at scale. Security at scale is something that we're going to see a big increase in 2022. You want to create the workload, create a security that's required for it within the process, and move on to the different workload. Yeah, because there are so many different changes that are going on in today's cloud environments and the products within the companies, a microservice and another module and another microservice is being deployed, and the different architectures and different solutions and integration and merges between companies and products and integrations. They change so rapidly. So we're going to see, I think, a huge increase in the speed of security, right? And the ability for security to scale across these different landscapes, and automations around that.
Mm-hmm. Any more recommendations you have?
Yes, I can add. I think it's very, very important that, having open channels. Victor mentioned it briefly that, in big enterprise, something takes years to move something. It goes to what we've been saying here. Things need to happen fast, because if hackers, respond quickly, and we've seen it happen in Log4j, but also if you were to look, and I would say, share with you some statistics. If you would take CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency in the US, which is responsible for all the security for all companies in the US, federal, financial, everything. And they did a report in the end of 2021 looking at vulnerabilities happening throughout the world. So there's been almost 16,000 reported CV. That was reported ones. And out of those 16,000, 15,000 plus plus, um, most of them, the one that were actually leveraged for exploit were happening 58% within the first 24 hours. So that 60%, what was leveraged, happened within, almost immediately. So you need to understand, and the rest, by the way, was another 2 days. So totally between 24 hours to 72 hours, not the entire 16,000, but most of them were used. But this showed that you need to have proper communication, way to communicate, have the team, have them already ready. It's not only, I know how to reach him. No. Do you know how to, get the right person, have the involvement, do a CR, do a CM to the pipeline, whatever's needed. How do you roll back? The entire process, having what we call as the PPT, the people, the process, and the technology to support that. Because if you don't have that, having that at ground zero immediately will not work. You will break something. And that's part of what I think is definitely we need to be aware of. And my respected colleague mentioned it, but definitely you have to adapt and respond quickly. And the security should be built right into whatever you're doing and respond quickly to any alerts and changes.
Mm-hmm.
I would
So
just like to make a small correction when you said, and I think that many people say things like big enterprise, right? And they don't really mean big enterprise, because if you say big enterprise, Google is a big enterprise, Netflix is a big enterprise, Capital One is a big enterprise, Amazon is a big enterprise, right? So what we really want to say when we say in common talk, big enterprise, we mean big enterprise that is still not living in this century. That's what we really, really mean, because there are as many, we have countless examples of big enterprises moving fast. So it's not about the size, and companies cannot hide behind being, hey, I'm big, therefore I cannot be fast.
You cannot be too big to fall.
Yeah. So in every sector today has a big enterprise that is moving fast and still being secure at the same time, give or take, right? So please don't hide behind the size. And I'm not saying this to panelists, but to people listening. Size is not an excuse.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I think there's so many tools out there. Maybe you can help pinpoint what CISOs and other people in the company who are involved with the cloud should look for in a tool that can actually, assist them to do all the things that you just mentioned. So, Victor, can you help us? We're already with you.
The tool that should do everything, to begin with, there is no single tool that will solve all your problems. If there is, then we wouldn't have those problems. But I guess that somebody else is probably better equipped to answer this question. This is a plug into CloudWise. Come on. I know you can say something.
Oh,
there you go.
Oh, come on.
There I'm biased. There you go. Go.
But to be honest. No, but yeah, let me share some things that are going there. So I've been working as a cloud solution architect for the past 3 years at different companies. 4 different companies. It was a partner that does projects and services for customers, right? So what I've seen was many companies that adopt many products because there are so many different solutions for different topics of security across the board, right? The security landscape is like, you take a shopping cart and a budget and go ahead and purchase several products off the shelf that you need for you. And that thing never ends. That thing never ends. And it was a challenge, and it was one of the reasons behind CloudWise, actually, because the platform tries to bring several solutions, the critical areas, into one and create a security platform. So yeah, it is a pain that we targeted, and we do see that the second thing is working with these so many companies. We've noticed, again, what we mentioned, the the gap between the security and R&D, right? So the products for security are also bundled into that gap. They are so oriented, some of them, towards security, that the R&D gets the input from the security, from the CISO, and delays it to a project, delays it to a certain time, and it's not R&D friendly. And it's very important to see when you go ahead, you discuss tool selection, right? When you go ahead and you review the tools, so yes, they should be for the CISO, for the security team, but who then gets to work with them? Who then needs to get its deliverable from that tool, no matter if it's Cloudways or a different one, and then implement the security recommendation, the R&D, right? So is this tool R&D friendly? Is this tool enabler, or is it an enforcer, right? Is it the officer that says, hey, this is what you need to do, and how much information does it give you there? Or does it just, does it help you do that, the thing that you're trying to do? And how friendly is that? So we've seen the adoption of security really relies on that metrics, on those metrics. So you want to make sure that the tool is very friendly, and it's trying to cover as much as the things that you worry about as an organization, not just a certain time period, right? If software development lifecycle attack chain is currently targeted, right, be it open source, so you go ahead and buy an open source security tool. That's just like trying to buy an insurance. That's not being secured. So that think of the implementation that's going on after the fact, after you bought the tool.
Not even insurance. Insurance pays you when something bad happens.
Yes.
That's the point of insurance, right?
Yeah.
This is not insurance. This is
Yeah.
just a tool
But
that
it's a nice word to say. It's a nice way to say something else that I would not say, but covering your. So we don't
Cover your
want to
behind.
cover. Yeah. So we
It's a
want to
nice
actually
word.
get secured, right?
So we have a few minutes left. Owen, do you have anything to add on that?
I would add that, thank you for listening. And I hope looking forward for 2022, understanding again, come fresh, review your security, try to think out of the box, review what you're doing, try to, segment what are the big, aspects. Usually when I come to a company, I found out that between 80 to 90% of the income of the company, the revenue, is actually coming from 10 to 20% of their processes. And protect those first and understand what's the business, how to secure it, embrace the cloud, but also support it with a proper security. Okay, that's what that's my take on this. And definitely invest in security, be proactive. Otherwise, it will cost you a lot more. You have to adapt quickly and understand this. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so it's been an hour and it passed by so quickly. I want to thank all our panel members for sharing their thoughts and experience with us today. It was really interesting. So thank you for being with us. I just want to remind everyone, we didn't have time for questions, but feel free to reach out to all our panel members via LinkedIn, connect with us and ask us questions. We're waiting for you. Another reminder is to go to the expo section and get the VIP package. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for being with us, and I hope to see you again in our next panel. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Keep safe.